on my mind a lot. Don't need no time watch. I don't know how I got you in my pocket spot. Yeah, that's babe, need you every day. You like my oxygen. Make it seem like the barging down. Got my heart no barging in. From the bed to the floor to the couch. Might wake the neighbors up. Break you in and break you out. In the end, we're gonna make it.
Dionna, welcome back to another episode of All Time High.
Hi.
Today, we're going to talk about crypto around the world.
Yeah, I love it.
What's that ride at Disneyland? It's a small world.
It's a small world. Yeah, I think they closed that down.
They did? How come?
Yeah.
They probably want to make room for all the crypto conversations that are going on around the world.
Right.
Maybe
They're
that
gonna
was
move
it.
crypto around the world now.
Yeah. In fact, I've got a really great, and we're just going to jump right into it today in
Do it.
today's episode.
See what you got.
Mario Nafal, who provides content, and he does a very nice job of being authentic about it, I believe, somehow came up with these populations. I don't have the source. He is my source, so I don't know what the source of our source was.
It's interesting.
But he's saying that crypto users hit 300 million people worldwide.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, that's a big number. There's a lot of people. I think the one that I immediately am drawn to, and I'm going to come back to you in just a second on this, but when I look at the US at 15.6%, and down here it says 28 million people, I have been through the process in the automotive industry where, and even in the internet in general, when you're in that 5% to 15% range, a lot of struggle, a lot of companies are created, a lot of companies fail. There's moments of capitulation.
Yeah.
And I know we're going through that right now. But once you reach the 20% level, now all the early adopters are in, all the pioneers have established some of the frameworks, and the real speed, the real increase goes from 20% to 50%.
Yeah.
And as I looked at this, I realized that United Arab Emirates is already at 30.4%, and you were there just a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
What?
I want to get kind of your insight into the difference, subtle though it may be, from a country that's literally at twice the adoption level that the US is in terms of a percentage. I don't know what it means in terms of people, but what was your sense of what's transpiring over there, having been there recently?
Are you kidding me? The UAE is so, they want to be the leader of everything, right? So if it's a new technology, if it's like they want it bigger, they want it better. Like they're in fact, when you go there, it is so unbelievably lavish of everything that they do. But they grab onto, this emerging technology. And I can remember back in 2018, we had gone and we had actually had some conversations with the Dubai government to talk about ways that we can integrate blockchain into some of their government things. So they're not only pro blockchain, they're pro crypto too. And because they take a favorable stance, people are more likely to do it. And I think that's one of the big issues with the US is that we're not willing to take that favorable stance that really empowers people to be, we should be the leader. I mean, Texas has the highest hashing power of Bitcoin. The US should be the number one leader in crypto, period. And it's a shame they're not.
I think part of it's the innovator's dilemma. Have you heard of that before? Where the country that's in the lead with technology, and because of Silicon Valley and Apple and Amazon and a lot of Netflix, even US-based companies that have succeeded worldwide, it's like, how do we protect what we have versus if you truly are an innovator? And even look at Apple, right? If you are an innovator and you need it to help you go to the next level, you're more inclined to not disrupt what it is that you already have. And so the US is playing a protectionary game. Even though it's at 15%, you look at UAE and they're going, hey, we're playing the innovators game. We're trying to be next up. We want to play the game. I'm not saying that the whole golf dynamic with Live Tour and the PGA Tour is the same, but you can see that it's very similar.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. They want to lead everything. And wait till they start settling petro in crypto. Like, imagine that.
Oh, I have.
I bet.
I think it's inevitable. I think they're already starting to. I mean, when you sanction different countries and say you can't use what we have for payment purposes, well, if I can pay in another way, would I want to do that? And I'm for the US is maintaining its position as world reserve currency. But I'm looking at the different opportunities and options, and other countries are willing to play that game.
Yeah. And well, so think about this though, right? As soon as crypto had come out, Facebook tried to do a token. And
They did.
Facebook, so if the US took a favorable stance, it would then allow Facebook to do something like that. And Facebook 100% has the ability to take over the dollar, like, period. They're just, from accessibility, their reach. I mean, we were just researching it yesterday for some of the stuff that we do with Blockade Labs. And 3 billion people go into Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram a day. One day. 3 billion people every single day. So think about if they were to have a coin and then be able to do real-time settlements and cross-border payments, it would just kill it. There'd be no, the dollar would
That's
be
not
out.
monthly active users. That's daily active users.
Daily.
And by my count, there's 8 billion people in the world. So if 3 billion, roughly half, let's call it 35-40% of people are on a particular device on the daily, you pretty much have the network set up.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this got it was kiboshed, basically.
I mean, the US is really struggling right now to stay as a world currency, I believe, just because of, the stance we've taken as far as oil versus electric, and then the stance that we've taken as far as sanctions against different countries of war. When you're the world currency, you should not be taking a stance to punish people and say that you cannot use this. And a lot of other countries recognize it, and they're backing off of the dollar now because of those sanctions. And so you kind of have this perfect storm of the US losing a little bit of that foothold, and then all of these digital currencies standing up that have the potential to rival the dollar. So they're taking this stance hard as a like to hold on to it, but we'll see if that actually works.
Yeah, and in terms of what transpires, typically not here, but let's just say a good example would be the football organizations at the collegiate level, right? Because governance is to manage the people, but the economics of managing the people becomes a big part of what drives the success or failures of different countries. And so, strangely enough, when you look at the universities, which are places of higher learning, you have a lot of realignment, reorganization, shifting dynamics, because football is such a big thing in the US. And I've watched for many years as football teams have moved in and out of different alignments because of TV contracts and because of monetary policies within those TV contracts, or because of the monetary policies of the different conferences. And so it's interesting to me that I don't think it's that dissimilar in function or form. And so I'm taking some of my, and not financial advice, but I'm taking some of my cues from what's been going on now for probably 10 years with college football realignment.
Yeah, and I'll just say this, for the people that are a little hesitant, to me, Bitcoin's always going to be gold. And this is not financial advice. This is my own personal opinion for the way I see things going. Should the US integrate the digital dollar and or clamp down, like the amount of monitoring that's going on right now between banks and IRS, and the amount of information that's getting passed and forth through businesses, is a complete violation of our privacy. And so if you want to be able to have some type of financial stability, right, having some crypto, Bitcoin preferably, on a hard drive, not attached to the internet.
Not an exchange. Yeah, I get it.
Like go put it in a safe, go hide it somewhere, because should something ever happen and you lose access, I mean, they're talking about the potential for 100 banks to fail right now because the Fed did not drop the rate again, right? And so you also have $18 billion in housing that's about to come and get foreclosed on because you're now hitting that 1 year, 18-month point from when the Fed started raising rates. So there's all these different mechanisms that are all going to affect the economy and the dollar. And so as the US keeps clamping down on our ability to buy and what we want to spend and how we want to spend our money, Bitcoin is the safe haven from that control.
It is. And I'm going to put a different spin on it. I agree with everything that you're saying, but I would also say that when you look at the ability for us to issue bonds, treasury notes, to then buy them back from ourselves, for our ability to issue currency, money, give money to other countries at such astronomical levels, that we have been setting ourselves up without interest rate cuts. We've been setting ourselves up. I call it Janet Yellen's checkbook. She's basically keeping the money on the sidelines for right now. And as those things are happening, I am looking for a flurry of activity heading into this election year. And so with an election year, it's hard to imagine that there wouldn't be some sort of interest rate cuts, even though they're going to continue to monitor what's transpiring. When we started the year, we thought it was going to be 3, and now everybody's kind of down to 1. And you have all these assets that Janet, her checkbook, is ready to deploy against to help buy these treasury bonds to get them to the rates that are more preferable and make sure that the liquidity continues to flow. Because that's what you're talking about, is the liquidity. I wanted to go back to this deal one more time just to take a look. There's one other thing to me that's worth noting here. I know I would say you've got Saudi and UAE right in the middle, but there is this kind of APAC region that is having a lot of popularity. You can see the Philippines, Vietnam. I look at the two that are above 20% as being at critical thresholds. And so you have had some experience. Philippines at 13.4, they're right on the edge. You can see Singapore. I mean, there is this concentration of activity there. And then there are 2 other places. Let's talk about that for a second. The APAC region. What's your take on the dynamic there that's driving activity at these heightened levels?
Singapore has always been a very favorable crypto place. In fact, when I worked for GoCoin, our licensing was out of Singapore. And so they took a stance pretty early. I don't know that they deviated too much from it. And so to me, Singapore doesn't make that much of a difference. I mean, it's pretty typical because of the stance that they took. I'm surprised it's actually not higher. And maybe that's just because other countries have taken favorable stances and now some of the business is moving from Singapore to those other countries.
Is there a regulatory framework there? I don't know. Is there?
Yeah. There's, I mean, because GoCoin was able to get a money transmitter license from them for crypto. So it wasn't, so we were able to do our settlements because of our banking license out of Singapore. And so and that was back in, that stood up in 2014, 2015. It was pretty early.
Okay.
It was the second one next to BitPay and the first one to take altcoins for payments. And so that Singapore makes sense to me. As far as the other two, couldn't one of them get invaded soon? And I also thought that was kind of interesting too. So you're looking at countries that have lower, like you had Venezuelan on there.
So I was going to go there next. I mean, you basically have complete political chaos there in these bottom 2.
Yeah, well, I think Ukraine is getting money funded for the war in crypto. So that's kind of a no-brainer. I feel like the other section is maybe gearing up for a potential of an invasion. I could be wrong in which country that is, but I feel like it's that area. And then, the other one is you got to think of terrorist stuff too, right? Because it's not as traceable. I mean, it is traceable, but you have to have the information.
I mean,
like you can't look at crypto and say, oh, it's this person. It takes some additional work in order to do it. But, that settlement time, those cross borders makes it easy.
I think you've been listening to Elizabeth Warren too long. Just because it is not, crypto is not, Ukraine is not getting all their funds from crypto. My Lord. I mean, as a percentage of the total, what do we think the U.S. checkbook has done for them? I mean,
well, I don't think it's all their funds, but wasn't the government pushing money through FTX to Ukraine? I mean, I'm pretty sure that was happening at some point. So, you're only looking at still 10%, but
I wonder if they were made whole in the bankruptcy proceedings. Oh my God.
They were made whole many times over between FTX and the U.S. Thank you for all the people in the U.S. for paying taxes and funding the support of Ukraine. But Ukraine's got this financial constraint. Almost every single country aside from the US on there is in some type of financial constraint, right? So that makes it an easy, like, oh, okay, I'm going to use this. I have some theories of why those numbers aren't higher, but
do share. I'm all ears. I'm sure our listeners would like to hear it. If you are liking the show, listening to the show right now, would be a great time to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, help get the word out as you're listening. If you've got thoughts about different countries, please leave comments down below. We're not experts on all the different countries. We are just talking in glittering generalities, trying to bring more light to the subject matter and hopefully help you understand and grow in the space just like we are each and every day. So we're kind of in the rabbit hole a little bit. Dionna, take us one step deeper.
Yeah. So for one, I think the barrier to entry to crypto is too hard. You know what I mean? To have to memorize your key phrase. I know so many people who have money lost in Bitcoin because they lost their keywords and they can't access their wallet anymore. So that's intimidating. Think of the elderly people, right, in our country who are getting scammed all the time. And this just adds another layer of complexity to that. So one, you have a difficult barrier to entry. Two, you have the security of I could lose this at any time, or if it's connected to the internet, somebody could hack me, which is not. It's a little bit harder, I think, with banks. And you could call a bank and say, "Hey, this is a fraudulent transaction, and you may or may not get your money back." In crypto, that's not possible at all. You can't call anybody and be like, "Hey, somebody stole my money." It's like, well, your money's gone. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Although I will say that the exchanges work together to understand when a hack happens, that they shut down any type of money that goes through those addresses. So I was in Tokyo when they actually, all the Asian exchanges had come together to include Binance. And they sat down and said, how can we be proactive? And that was one of the things that they had come out with. So you have barrier to entry, you have security, and then you have regulation, and then you actually have use case. So when will we see mass adoption? When you start seeing people pay in crypto. As of right now, that's not a typical thing. It was kind of like fun for a minute, but people understand you can buy it, hold it, and potentially make some money off of it. Why would I spend it? And so until you overcome those four things, I don't think we'll see mass adoption.
So right now it's more an investment vehicle than a transaction 100%. Vehicle. And you think the big numbers are going to pop once we get to a transaction place. Fair enough?
Yeah. When you start to see Bitcoin being a more viable thing than your local currency, and then in some places that's already a thing. Like what was the Mexico one? Sorry, I'm not going to think of it. But one of the guys took a very big stance and said like, hey, yes, we want to be pro crypto, and if they allow settlements in there and they allow Bitcoin to be settlement in there, then you're going to see a big adoption there. Man, I wish I could think of the name of it. I actually shared. He did a fantastic speech about who actually runs America and like how the elite are calling the shots. I thought it was fantastic. And so, in these other smaller countries, that becomes viable because their currency is horrible. Our currency is pretty good. So it's still speculative when it comes to us.
Well, yeah, you're basically talking about flipping the numerator and the denominator, because right now things are defined in US dollars.
Yeah.
And so even with, and it's worth mentioning one more time, the FTX case, the investment vehicle that people were working through, let's say it was Bitcoin or even any of the other altcoins, they're getting reimbursed in US dollars when what it was that they lost was Bitcoin or any of the other tokenized assets that they had on that particular exchange. Yeah. So you are talking about flipping the conversation, and that's going to be a challenging thing for, I think that's probably once we reach, and I think we'll get there, once you reach past 50% of the population participating. So you said it earlier, like 3 billion people are participating in Facebook. That's daily active users. Yeah. I think when you get to 4 billion daily active users in crypto, and it's not impossible to imagine that, in my mind at least, then you're at 50% threshold. And that's what happened in terms of accelerating to 60, 70, 80%. And I saw it happen with mobile phones. I saw it happen with internet. And so when you talk about money, I mean, we're talking about all the money. Maybe it's at an all-time high. This show should be all the money, because eventually that's where this thing is headed. I don't see how it isn't.
You know what I just thought of? And I think this is completely speculative, right? Just in my mind.
Do your own research, not financial advice.
For sure. BlackRock was a huge holder in FTX, right? They were one of the investors. BlackRock also got the ETF for crypto, for Bitcoin. Yeah. So could it have been that they knew the influx of money would raise the price of the coin to where they could actually make FTX solvent, right? So think about this for a second. So they take the position of, if we pump more money, then we could potentially make that money back and recoup the money of the people. And maybe that's what you see right now. Maybe they pumped a whole bunch in and they're starting to take a little out, and then they'll pump a whole bunch more in, and then they'll take a little bit out. And you're going to see them actually, if this is happening, you're going to see them be able to move the market so that they can capitalize on their investments.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what they do now with all their other investments. So this is not a new playbook. I think it is one of the challenging aspects of taking this to a higher level is now the institutional investors who are more adept at some of these games are now playing. And they're not playing somebody else's playbook. They're not leaning into the libertarian movement. They're leaning into hedge fund activities, which is what they know better than anyone else.
Yeah, they want the money. Where is the money?
Where is the money? It's where the money and the people. Where are the money and where are the people?
Where's the all-time high?
I don't know. We're continue to charge ahead each day, try to make it more interesting, more attractive for people. I think your point though about having regulatory frameworks, even though we have a tendency to stay away from political dynamics, those help those countries be more attractive. It helps their people who want to do right, who want to do well, just like you and I do. We want to pay taxes. We get to pay taxes. Yeah. So it's how do I know what I'm getting myself into at the beginning so that I don't get caught in the middle with some awkward circumstance.
Yeah. Oh, wait, was it Ecuador? Ecuador is pretty, right? Wasn't that the president of, maybe I'm just thinking all my countries wrong. I'll come back to it.
No, I think Venezuela was the one where.
Drop it in the chat because for some reason it's just not coming to my mind.
No problem. Well, hey, we're right at the conclusion, the 21-minute mark, just like 21 million Bitcoin have ever been printed. So we're going to stop right there. Thanks, Dionna, for another great episode. We'll see you next time on All Time High.
Bye, everyone.
You on my mind a lot. Don't need no time watch. I don't know how I got